What's up? It's your boy, the Black Andy Cat. We're back for another episode of These Three Things. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, ding, like the video, and jump in the comments. So today, we're talking about the CFP and the current negotiations that are going on to expand the CFP playoff to 16 teams. Now, this is interesting. This isn't directly about the Gators. It indirectly affects the Gators because one day as Gator fans, we hope to see them in the CFP. Now, no doubt, a 16-team playoff would serve the Gators and pretty much any team well, right? Because the more teams, the better your chance of getting in. Just ask Notre Dame. If there had been a 16-team playoff this season, they would have made it. And the fact is that there was discussion about expanding to a 16-team playoff this past season, but it didn't happen. Why not? For the same reason it might not happen next season. I don't know if anyone has been watching. This has kind of been going under the radar, but last weekend, the CFP committee, which consists of all the commissioners of all the conferences in college football, P4 plus the G5, okay, and then there's a chairman of that committee. They got together last weekend to talk about expansion. And so the discussion of moving to 16 teams came up. Now, this happened last year as well. Now, what needs to happen with the CFP? The CFP is kind of a weird thing, okay? The Big Ten and the SEC have I guess you'd call it, first right of refusal on any type of changes to the system. It's written into, I don't know, the charter, contract, whatever you want to call it with the CFP. So if they don't agree to changes, the changes can't happen. And so currently, the discussion about 16 teams is at a halt because Sankey, the commissioner of the SEC, won't approve the move to 16 teams. Why is that? Well, there's a reason. It's not just that he doesn't want to move to 16 teams. There's a caveat that goes to this. So now a couple of things you need to understand. I know I talk to people about the CFP. Understand the NCAA has nothing to do with the CFP. All right, the college football playoff is its own entity run by its own business organization. And so they're making up their own rules. And so that's why there's this thing where the Big Ten and the SEC have so much influence over how the CFP operates. So now last season when they got to this point and had this discussion, the Big Ten said, let's move to 16 teams, but we want more automatic qualifiers, meaning teams who get in automatically. Right now, the automatic qualifiers are the 5 highest ranked conference champions in college football. What that does is that gives you generally, in most cases, it's going to give you the P4 conferences and 1 G5. This season, because Duke won the ACC and they weren't ranked, we got 2 G5 teams into the college football playoff because the automatic qualifier wasn't the 4 P4 conferences and the next highest ranked G5. It was just simply the highest ranked conference champion. So therefore, we had 2 G5 conference champions who were ranked higher than Duke. So that's how that happened. Now, what happened last season was that the Big Ten Conference wanted to set up automatic qualifying where 4 teams from the Big Ten, 4 teams from the SEC, and then 2 teams from each of the Big 12 and ACC would get in, and then there'd be 4 at-large bids, and that would give you the field of 16 teams. The SEC said no. All right, Sankey, the commissioner of the SEC, said no, we don't want that. He didn't want more automatic qualifiers. He wanted to keep the automatic qualifiers to the 5 highest ranked conference champions. Interesting. Why is that? You're guaranteeing 4, right? Why wouldn't Sankey want to get those guaranteed automatic qualifiers? We'll come back to that. Now, let's jump to this year. So not Ohio State, but the Big Ten said this season, let's do it this way. Let's go to the 16 teams. Let's not change the number of automatic qualifiers, but in 3 years, we have to go to 24 teams. Okay? So Sankey once again said, no, 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 we're not going to do that right now. Now, this isn't set in stone. They have until this Friday to come up with an agreement. If they can agree by Friday, then they'll move to the 16 teams. If they don't agree by Friday, and this is something to do with the contract and ESPN, then what happens is they're still going to stay with the same 12 teams, and they're going to stay with the same automatic qualifiers unless there's some change that's agreed to by Friday in terms of how that might work out in the 12-team field. I think there could be some changes there because people weren't happy about the two G5 conferences. Now, why is Sankey opposed to both of these proposals? All right, there's a reason. Can you guess? You're smart people. In the words of that great African-American lyricist Deion Sanders, must be the money. It's about the money, okay? It's about the money for both the Big Ten and the SEC. So to understand why Sankey doesn't want to make this move, you've got to understand the money. So here's how the money works out. So the way the CFP works, ESPN has $1 billion contract with the CFP for the television rights of the game. And so that's where the big influx of money comes from. Then you have ticket sales, and you've got, t-shirts and all the things that go along with hosting those games. That's why the CFP committee holds the bigger games and the championship game in bigger stadiums, right? They can sell you can sell luxury suites. Those go for a huge penny, and so they're making more money. Now, what happens at the end of the day is that the CFP pays the conferences. They don't pay the teams directly, they pay the conferences. And how this payout works is off the top. The P4 conferences each get a cut of the pie. So under the current system, that's about $79 million per conference just for being a part of the CFP, just for agreeing to this agreement and having this playoff. Each conference off the top gets about $80 million, somewhere around $79 million. Let's say approximately $79 million right now. Okay? Now, what happens after that? Well, there's a performance payout system that's included. So if somebody from your conference makes the CFP field, you get $4 million for every team that makes the playoff. For example, the SEC had 4 teams make the CFP. They got $16 million for those 4 teams. Once you win the first game and get to the quarterfinals, each team that gets to the quarterfinals, there's another $4 million that goes into the pot that goes to the conference, and it goes on from there. If you make the semifinals, $6 million for each team that makes the semifinals. For the championship game, there's another $6 million that goes to the conference. And then each team gets a $3 million travel stipend to cover, their flights and hotels to get to these games. So there's a lot of money that could be made by doing this, right? And then you say, well, wait a minute, why wouldn't Sankey want that $16 million? Well, he got $16 million this year, okay? So now, once it gets to the conference, how that money is divided up amongst teams starts to change. And that doesn't really pertain to this conversation. Just suffice it to know that the money is divided up a little differently amongst the teams. What is interesting, and go do the research, FSU and Clemson, who both fought hard to get more money, ended up screwing themselves this season and ended up giving more money to Miami because they sued and changed the rules. If the rules had been the way they had been in the ACC before all this changed, FSU would have made more money this season, but they got screwed out of the money. So there it is, all right? So that's how the money's divided. So why doesn't Sankey want to agree to this system? Well, here are 3 things why Sankey doesn't want to agree to this system, okay? Thing number 1, if they it's not necessarily that Sankey doesn't want to go to 16 teams. He doesn't want to go to 24. And the automatic qualifier is kind of like going to 24. So why doesn't Sankey want then that's thing number one. Why doesn't he want the automatic qualifiers to expand? And why doesn't he want to go to 24 teams? The money, okay? First off, automatic qualifiers gets them 4 teams. Sankey doesn't want the Big Ten to get 4 teams. Look at this season. The SEC got 4 teams in. The Big Ten only got 3 teams in. SEC made more money. Part of this is power and control, okay? Sankey wants to have more SEC teams in it because they make more money. The fewer teams the Big Ten has, the less money they make. Money is power in college football right now. We talk about this all the time. That's the discussion, right? The game is being driven by money. And so by not giving the Big Ten those 4 automatic qualifiers, and then the SEC having the advantage because there's a bias of the committee, as many people believe. They got 4 teams in. They made more money this season just off the rip because of that $16 million. Now, as things went ahead, you have to add it up. But the SEC doesn't want more automatic qualifiers because they don't want to share as much money with the other conferences. They want to keep their financial advantage. So thing number two, why doesn't Sankey want to move to 24 teams? Well, with 24 teams, what you do is you're going to guarantee essentially more teams from the Big Ten getting into the CFP. Okay, by default, those 2 conferences are considered the best conferences. So now more Big Ten teams are going to get in, which in turn is going to give them more money, which is in turn going to make them more powerful because remember, money is power in college football. But there's another side to the 24 teams setup that Sankey doesn't like, and it comes to the TV contract, okay? And that's thing number 3. Thing number 3 is the TV contract. The way the current CFP contract is written, once it goes to 24 teams, ESPN has to give up their contract and it goes to an open bid amongst ESPN, Fox, NBC, and the other networks. Now, again, what that's probably more than likely going to do is drive up the cost. Right now, ESPN's paying $1 billion. So now the bidding's probably going to get closer to $2 billion if you open it up to an open bid. So that's going to mean more money, right? That big payout of $80 million is going to go up to maybe $100 million now that you're doubling the money, right? Maybe $160 million per P4 conference. So why doesn't Sankey want to do that? Well, think about the TV contracts, okay? The TV contracts are where this is all kind of tied and bundled together. ESPN has the sole rights to all of the SEC home games. So the belief is that because SEC controls the CFP and has the television rights to the SEC games, ESPN's going to do everything in its power to use the power of the media to get as many SEC teams into the playoff as possible, right? Makes sense because that's what ESPN has been showing all season. So they're going to pub their teams because that means their viewership is going to stick around. If you open up this contract, now Fox and NBC are going to jump in, and now they're going to do everything they can to pub up the Big Ten and get their teams in. So what's essentially happening with this 24-team system is that Sankey is trying to protect his ally, his television ally, which is ESPN. And this has been a big complaint of everyone in college football outside the SEC. They feel like the SEC has too much influence because ESPN controls the rights. And they're not wrong. This was part of why FSU sued and to a certain degree, Clemson sued the CFP and ESPN because they were monopolizing, using the power of their media to keep other teams or to keep as many SEC teams in the CFP as possible. Why did Alabama get in at 9-3? A lot of us believe that Alabama never should have gotten in. So that's the reason that you don't want this 24-team playoff if you're the SEC. They're protecting their ESPN ally. Now, there's another reason. There's another reason that the SEC doesn't want to go to 24 teams, because a 24-team format is going to force the end of conference championship games. Okay, why does that matter? Well, the SEC conference championship game is one of the most valuable it is the most valuable conference championship game in all of sports. Okay, the SEC conference championship game brings in $20 to $30 million of revenue to the SEC every season. That's a lot of money to give up. Sankey doesn't want to have to give up that $20 to $30 million because now the money gets divided. Okay, so there it is. That's where we're at with the CFP and 16 teams. Will they find a way? Will Sankey hold strong? I think Sankey's holding on because he knows there's sentiment. If he can get the Big Ten to back down, he gets the best of both worlds. He gets his 16-team playoff without having to agree to the 24-team format, which in turn protects his ally ESPN and his big moneymaker, the SEC championship game. So hey, that's what's going on right now. It's really interesting. So keep your ear to the ground. Let's see what happens on Friday, whether or not they can work this out and we can get to a 16-team championship. I really don't want a 24-team championship. I like conference championships, not just because I'm an SEC fan. I like winning. I'm an old school guy. People need to win. Look at Miami. Miami got all the way to the final, lost, but has nothing to show for it. No natty, no conference championship. At the end of the day, when we look back 20 years from now, they're just another 3-loss team that didn't win the championship. I think that's unfair. So, anyway, this is your boy, the Black Andy Cap. Remember, subscribe, ding, like the channel, jump in the comments, tell me what you think. Until next time, peace.